One of the biggest aspects of Sri Lanka right now has been its economy, the recovery path it has been on for the last 2 years, and more importantly, what lies ahead. We are in conversation with two of the most prominent people in the business community in Sri Lanka to talk to us about the opportunities, challenges that lie ahead, and the India-Sri Lanka relationship amidst the larger political change or political dialogue that may be taking place in Sri Lanka. All right. Dr. Hadi Jamaldeen, who is the director at Haley's, one of the largest conglomerates in Sri Lanka. He's also the executive director at Stabilization Capital. Thank you so much for speaking to NDTV. And we have Mr. Dr. Karuna Nayake, who is the executive director of ANC Education, again, one of the largest education companies in Sri Lanka. Thank you so much, everyone, for speaking to me.
Thank you.
We're speaking at a time when there's a fair bit of political activity happening. But this is not a political conversation. This is a conversation to understand where is the Sri Lankan economy headed? What does the business community feel about Sri Lanka right now? And the larger India-Sri Lanka relationship amidst the larger issues that may be going on. So my first question, and this is a question I want both of you to sort of answer on, which is that how things stand right now. You've had a 2 year of recovery period. Some would say the economy is fragile. Some would say recovery is taking place. How is your assessment? Let's start with you, sir, and then we get you in as well.
Yeah, so my assessment is we are going through a stabilization phase at the moment, from all the essentials being not available, banking side, everything being stuck. We are now just coming through that stabilization phase. So what the pandemic really identified is structural problems that Sri Lanka has had and has had for a while but didn't surface. So the issue really has been the fact that we lack dollar-based income, right? So we have four routes of dollar-based income that we receive as a country. So we get export earnings, we get from our worker remittances, we get funds coming in, tourism earnings, and also FDI. So during the pandemic, two of these roads were closed fully. So no tourism income, and we didn't have any FDI. Also, the worker remittances came down at one point. So when these 2.5 roads of four closed down, we really struggled to pay our oil bills. India came to our rescue with credit facilities, etc. So to come out of this problem, the diagnosis is we need to increase the size of these four roads and make sure there is enough traffic that goes through. So as a country that right now lacks multiple resources, we have to think, how are we going to enable these four roads to be expanded and more traffic to go on stream? Tourism, for me, is the lowest hanging fruit. In order to facilitate that, there are a few things that we need to do which doesn't cost the government money. Right? So what we're talking about is, if you take our regional competitors like Thailand, Malaysia, and we look to follow suit there.
Yes.
On the tourism line, what do we need to do? We need to open up our visa program, get up to 100 countries that can come into Sri Lanka, visa free and friendly.
Hold your thought. That's an important point that, tourism is an area we need to focus on. Let me get you in also, sir, in terms of the economy and the recovery that one has seen in the last 2 years. Some would also say it's a remarkable achievement that at least things are now back to normalcy than what they were 2 years back. In your assessment, where is the economic situation right now? And then we talk about the outlook for Sri Lanka.
For me, I think we are just below zero. Just below zero. So if zero being the base level.
So you're saying Sri Lankan economy is sub-zero?
I would say sub-zero right now, because still there are certain macro and micro elements that are still very, very weak. I believe we will take another year to 2 years to stabilize properly, to get our reserves up to probably $10 billion, to make sure all import restrictions are taken off, because there's currently a lot of import restrictions like on automobiles and so many other elements. So I think it will take another year or so to get to those levels. But I think from where we were, we've come to that near zero level. So that is what I would.
So from here on, it's upside, right?
Exactly.
It's from here on.
Exactly. So whoever comes into power, they're sitting in a gold mine of an opportunity to really take this country places. So I believe the next president has that opportunity, and I think that that's a great place to start for that new president.
That's a very important thing that you said, that whoever may come to power, as things stand right now, there are opportunities that sit on Sri Lanka's test right now in terms of economic opportunities. What, according to you, are those top three opportunities?
See, in terms of the economic opportunities that we're looking at, typically when what I've seen in my experience here, when governments come to power, they always talk about the lack of resource in order to fulfill anything, right? But here, I personally believe the opportunity that lies is to reform policy, reform sectors where we know we can get max out of, and whatever investment we put into infrastructure has to be on a high priority basis, on a needs basis.
But isn't funding a concern and still a pressing issue?
Funding is, but in terms of our infrastructure spend, right? So people say we don't need much more expressways. We need to spend to finish the Kandy Highway. We need to spend in terms of other infrastructure is things like an airport, right? So we don't need to go and spend significant amounts. The rest is to do with policy reform, ensuring that we have the correct framework for these sectors to flourish, right? And that is things that you need to do with pen and paper.
Okay. So before I come to what specific reforms are, do you agree with that? That funding is the biggest issue regarding funding is probably behind Sri Lanka, because the sense I get when I speak to a lot of people is that some of the options that lie, economic options that lie in front of the government, whoever may be, is to alleviate the cost of living problems that the common Sri Lankan is facing, and to alleviate that, funds will be needed.
Well, the economy has to grow, right? And as a result, our dollars have to grow. As a result, the rupee dollar parity will come down, and that will bring costs down, because we do import a lot of our requirements, right? Starting from oil to sugar to butter to milk to a lot of things come into the country. So I believe the dollar needs to appreciate, the rupee needs to appreciate against the dollar. So this is really, really important. While we look at big projects, I believe also very strongly that we need to look at some low-hanging fruits that Hardy mentioned, tourism, tourism-oriented real estate for Indians to come by. Because I know you guys have a beautiful coastline in Goa, but here you really can be on the beach, because I know the coastline is super expensive or not available for anyone to have a villa or a house or a condo hotel or something like that. Sri Lanka is full of these beaches. Foreigners can own freehold when it's a condominium. There is ways of investing through special accounts called the IA account, where you can repatriate your money without any restrictions, including your rental income. It's a beautiful place. Sri Lanka and India have a close bond. Sri Lankan people and the Indian people are united in this. So I think that whatever geopolitics and whatever situations may arise, our peoples are together. This I can assure you as a Sri Lankan, because I know that India helped us in our time of need, and Sri Lankans are a very appreciative group of people, and we do recognize that help. And I believe that most 22 million Sri Lankans will agree with me that we have no issues. And also for India, it's important, as I said prior to this interview as well, like, India to be a world superpower, to be the third biggest economy, which you guys are heading to in the next 20 years or 10 years. You can't have countries around you which has problems. And currently that is the situation.
Unfortunate, but you are true that the neighborhood is going through a bit of a crisis, or at least a bit of a turmoil right now. But I feel that Sri Lanka and India are the only two democracies that are there in the region, and the two democracies that are flourishing, functioning. And we are speaking on the eve of another democratic exercise that will take place in Sri Lanka. Important point you mentioned about real estate and tourism. Where all do you think India can partner with Sri Lanka, or where Sri Lanka would seek active Indian investments sectors, according to you?
See, I think there are two ways that India can come in to Sri Lanka. One is bringing in technology, techniques in every sector that they are specializing in and are excelling, and the other is capital investments that are coming, that are required for this country, where also the investors can make a good and safe return, right? So I think there's a lot of manufacturing-led areas that India is excelling. Um, Aerospace, spare parts, technology-driven stuff, which we are in Sri Lanka, we have some scale, but we need significant amount more support to scale up, and we have the resource to be able to fulfill. When it comes to hospitality, it's an area where we are very, very fortunate as Sri Lankans. A friend of mine that visited recently from Kuwait said, you know, you after his trip, he said, you guys, God has given you everything for the eye to see. You're so blessed. He said, God has given us everything that's under the soil. So it truly has a natural environment for hospitality related businesses to flourish. And hospitality is something that has been going on in Sri Lanka for long years.
Right.
For over 30 years it has been going on, right? And we are the service led side, we are very strong. In fact, I feel that there could be a transfer the other way when it comes to hospitality training. The expertise and all that is really very, very strong here and has a
Okay.
good grounding. Whereas the capital side of the investment and also the number of Indian tourists, the number one tourists that are coming to Sri Lanka are from India. With the proximity and all, it's the
Yes.
most obvious. So I think how we can cater to that market
Is the
into-
key question.
Yes.
I must ask you this as a prominent businessman. You also have, when you court investments, there are also instances of Chinese investments. There are a lot of Chinese investments here in Sri Lanka as well. In your assessment, how do you see the distinction between how China entered Sri Lanka in the last 10 years, the kind of investments that have happened, the turmoil that happened, and now? Is there more screening that is taking place? Is there some reluctance? Or do you think there is now greater realization that it needs to be on a case by case? I'm just trying to understand the Chinese investments coming into Sri Lanka, how they are viewed post the turmoil.
I think Chinese investments started coming in about 10 to 15 years ago. They were needed at the time. The government felt that those were the correct decisions. However, as we all know now, some were probably at rates of not viable projects. But the thing is, those investments are now already made.
Yes.
Right? Whether vis-a-vis the port city project or the airports or the ports. Now, as Sri Lanka, we have to make them work.
Yeah.
And for example, the port city project is a fantastic project. And I don't see why India, the BRICS nations can't look at this area, or for that matter, European Union or anywhere, because it's a fantastic project that anyone can become a stakeholder of, right? So I think that because land ownership is free, there's tax benefits, 40-year tax holidays, anyone can come. Only thing, the trading currency is dollar. So I think that we already have these investments made, so we have to make the best out of it.
One is the projects. You need to make those projects work. But what about future? Are you now courting Chinese investments with the same vengeance? Are you now watching or scrutinizing each of them because of the lessons and learnings of the last couple of years?
See, Gauri, we can't blame anyone. Ultimately, the investments are investments that the government of Sri Lanka sought, right? So that's what I said before, that we as a country now don't have significant amount of capital to invest in infrastructure or any other large investments. But with that limited investability that we have to think, where do we get our biggest bang for buck? Where is our ROI? So the prior investments that were made should all have been evaluated on return for country basis.
Right.
Right? So if you take the Hambantota port that was built, I think it's a fantastic project. But the ancillary bits that surrounds the port needs to be developed.
Yeah.
Right? So if you take, for example, Jebel Ali, you have a port that is flourishing and the entire service industry surrounding it is flourishing. Here, we got it the wrong way around. We put the port in and then we're thinking what we are going to do with it. So that's where you have to come up with the correct plan, and that's what lies with the next president and the government that comes in to be, how do we turn these things around
And make it work.
and make it work? So
Exactly.
what is the best return we as a country
Can
can
get
get?
out of
So
this.
I would, if it was my investment, I would be planning exactly how many industrial zones are surrounding the port, who is coming where.
That's an important point you made, and some of the issues that you raised are, in fact, extremely pertinent. I hope that when we speak next, we will be talking about some of these challenges turning into opportunities and successes for Sri Lanka, and wish Sri Lanka and the entire business community the very best from here on. Thank you so much for taking out the time.